The bombs have already fallen. Not a threat this time, not a drill. In the early hours of Saturday, February 28, 2026, the United States military and the Israeli Defense Forces launched simultaneous strikes on the Islamic Republic of Iran. And the Middle East that existed when you went to sleep last night no longer exists this morning. This is a special report. Every fact you are about to hear is confirmed, sourced, and on the record. We are going to take you through exactly what happened, exactly what was hit, exactly what Iran has already fired back, and exactly what this means for the United States, for the region, and for an oil market that keeps the global economy alive. No speculation, no exaggeration, just the sequence of events as they happened, and what they tell us about where this goes next. Here is what we know. At approximately 2:31 a.m. Eastern Time on Saturday, President Donald Trump posted a video to his Truth Social account. The message was 8 minutes long, and it began with 7 words that will be studied for decades. He said, "A short time ago, the United States military began major combat operations in Iran." He described the campaign as massive and ongoing. He said the objective was to defend the American people by eliminating imminent threats from the Iranian regime. He said the U.S. had sought repeatedly to make a deal. He said they had tried. And then he said this, and these words are verbatim and on the record. They rejected every opportunity to renounce their nuclear ambitions. And we can't take it anymore. The operation has a name. The Pentagon announced it on social media alongside an image of the American flag. It is called Operation Epic Fury. The previous round of strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities, conducted in June of 2025, was called Operation Midnight Hammer. The name has escalated. So has everything else. Simultaneously, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu released his own video statement, confirming that Israel had launched what Israeli Defense Minister Israel Katz described as a preemptive attack on Iran. Netanyahu's framing was direct and in front of cameras. He said the joint U.S. Israeli operation was intended, in his words, to remove the existential threat posed by the terrorist regime in Iran, and that their joint action would create the conditions for the brave Iranian people to take their destiny into their own hands. He singled out President Trump by name and praised what he called historic leadership. A U.S. official confirmed to Al Jazeera that the attacks were carried out as a joint military operation between the two countries. A separate U.S. official told Reuters that strikes were being conducted by both air and sea. A person briefed on the operation told NPR it was expected to last several days, with Israel's military focusing specifically on targeting Iran's missile production infrastructure. Within minutes of those announcements, footage began emerging from Tehran. Smoke rising above the skyline, sirens, citizens running. Iran's semi-official Fars news agency confirmed missile strikes on University Street and the Jamhuri area in central Tehran. Iran's Tasnim news agency confirmed additional explosions in the northern Sayed Khandan district of the capital. Reuters, citing an unnamed Iranian official, reported that several ministries in the southern portion of Tehran were targeted. Iranian media reported strikes extending beyond the capital, to Isfahan, to Qom, to Karaj, to Kermanshah, and to the western Elam province. Iran's airspace was closed. And then, within the hour, NetBlocks, the independent internet monitoring organization, confirmed that Iran had entered a near-total internet blackout, with national connectivity falling to just 4% of ordinary levels. The country went dark. Again. To understand why this happened today, and why it happened the way it did, you have to go back, not years, but weeks. Because the road to Operation Epic Fury was shorter than most people realize, and the final off-ramp disappeared less than 48 hours ago. The third round of U.S.-Iran nuclear talks had just concluded in Geneva on Thursday, February 24th. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi had described the talks as productive. He had told CBS News that he expected a good chance of a deal remaining. He had confirmed that Iran had still not delivered its written proposal, that Tehran's political leadership had not yet signed off on the document. A senior U.S. official told Axios the Trump administration was waiting for that written proposal before detailed negotiations could begin. The talks ended with claims of progress from both sides and almost no concrete details. Trump, speaking to reporters on Friday, less than 24 hours before the strikes, said he was not happy with the negotiations but indicated he would give diplomats more time. That was Friday afternoon. By early Saturday morning, the bombs were falling. What happened in those intervening hours has not been fully confirmed. What is confirmed is this. A senior Middle East diplomat with direct knowledge of the talks told one outlet that, and this is their framing on the record, yet again, when negotiations get close to success, Israel has intervened to preempt diplomacy. That statement is on the record. It is one perspective. It is not a conclusion. What it tells us is that even among insiders with direct access to the talks, there is no consensus about what broke the diplomatic window and who made the final decision to act when they did. What we know about the military context is not ambiguous at all. This moment did not arrive overnight. The United States had been positioning assets in the region for weeks at a pace and scale not seen since the lead-up to the 2003 invasion of Iraq. The USS Abraham Lincoln Carrier Strike Group arrived in the Middle East on January 26th, confirmed by the U.S. Navy and the Associated Press. The USS Gerald R. Ford, the most advanced aircraft carrier ever constructed, arrived at the NATO naval base at Suda Bay in Crete, Greece on Monday, February 23rd, visually confirmed by multiple news agencies, and immediately began moving toward the region. This marked only the second time in history that two American carrier strike groups were simultaneously dispatched to the Middle East. The first time was June 2025, for the original strikes on Iran's nuclear sites under Operation Midnight Hammer. Additional U.S. combat aircraft, armored units, and air defense systems had been repositioned across bases in Bahrain, Qatar, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Iraq, Syria, and the UAE. The New York Times, citing Pentagon officials, reported that hundreds of American service members had been transferred from Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, with parallel troop movements across the region. U.S. aerial refueling tankers and C-17 Globemaster transport aircraft arrived at Israel's Ben Gurion Airport on February 23rd, confirmed by multiple Israeli media outlets. The logistics signature of an imminent combined operation. On January 28th, Trump had written on Truth Social, "A massive armada is heading to Iran. It is moving quickly with great power, enthusiasm, and purpose." He told Iran to come to the table. He warned that the next attack would be far worse than last June's strikes if a deal was not reached. On February 19th, Trump confirmed the Gerald Ford deployment publicly, telling reporters, and this is a direct on-the-record quote, "In case we don't make a deal, we'll need it." No deal was made. The target struck Iran aligned with what U.S. and Israeli planners had publicly signaled for months they considered the priority list. Trump stated explicitly in his video that the U.S. would destroy Iran's missiles and raise its missile industry to the ground. U.S. officials described the strikes as not a small strike and confirmed that dozens of American attack aircraft, launched from bases across the region and from at least one carrier, were involved. The areas of Tehran struck included locations in proximity to the offices of Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei. Reuters reported, citing an official, that Khamenei was not in Tehran at the time and had been moved to a secure location. He had not been seen publicly in days before the strikes began. Iran's ballistic missile production infrastructure, the Parchin and Sharud complexes, were high on the confirmed target list. The Critical Threats Project at the American Enterprise Institute had documented in February that Israel had formally requested the United States strike those exact facilities if military action was ordered, specifically to degrade Iran's ability to retaliate. The Institute for Science and International Security had documented in satellite imagery that Iran was in the process of reconstructing buildings at those sites, the same buildings that house the planetary mixers required to produce solid fuel for ballistic missiles. The U.S. had intercepted a Chinese shipment of those same mixers in the Indian Ocean in November 2025. The reconstruction that made those sites a target was visible from orbit, and as of Saturday morning, those sites were being struck from the air. Iran's response did not wait. Within hours of the initial strikes, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps announced the first wave of what it described as a large-scale missile and drone attack against Israel. The Israeli military confirmed that missiles had been launched from Iranian territory toward Israeli soil. Air raid sirens sounded across Israel at approximately 8:15 a.m. local time. Israel declared a 48-hour nationwide state of emergency. Israeli Defense Minister Katz ordered all citizens to obey Home Front Command instructions. The country closed its airspace to all passenger flights. German carrier Lufthansa announced it was suspending flights to and from Tel Aviv, Beirut, and Oman until at least March 7th. KLM canceled flights from Amsterdam to Tel Aviv. Airlines across Europe began rerouting. The skies over the Middle East were emptying of civilian aircraft while filling with something else entirely. Then the strikes spread beyond Iran and Israel. And this is where the scope of what is now unfolding becomes impossible to understate. Iran targeted American military bases. Not one, not two, four. Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, the largest U.S. military installation in the entire Middle East, and the forward headquarters of U.S. Central Command, was targeted. Qatar's Ministry of Defense confirmed that its air defense systems, in coordination with U.S. forces, intercepted incoming Iranian missiles over Qatari territory. 2 missiles were intercepted. Qatar closed its airspace. Qatari authorities sent mobile alerts to all residents advising them to remain indoors and stay away from military installations. The U.S. Navy's 5th Fleet headquarters in Bahrain, Naval Support Activity Bahrain in the Jufair district of Manama, was struck by Iranian ballistic missiles. Bahrain news agency confirmed the attack. Footage released by Iranian media showed heavy smoke rising from the base area. Sirens sounded across the island nation. Bahrain's Interior Ministry instructed residents to move to the nearest safe location immediately. Al Dhafra Air Base in the UAE, which houses U.S. personnel, was targeted. Residents in Abu Dhabi reported loud explosions. The UAE announced a temporary partial closure of its airspace as a precautionary measure. Al Salem Air Base in Kuwait was also reported as a target by Iranian state-affiliated media. The IRGC announced a third wave of attacks against Israel, involving additional missiles and drones. U.S. embassies in Jordan, the UAE, Qatar, and Bahrain issued shelter-in-place orders for all American personnel and citizens. The U.S. Embassy in Amman stated, "The U.S. Embassy in Jordan is implementing a shelter-in-place for all personnel. We recommend all Americans do the same until further notice." U.S. Ambassador to Israel Mike Huckabee urged American citizens in Israel to stay near shelters and take immediate action at the sound of sirens. The UK Maritime Trade Operations Organization issued an emergency notice to all mariners, warning of significant military activity in the Arabian Gulf, the Gulf of Oman, the North Arabian Sea, and the Strait of Hormuz. The Strait of Hormuz. That phrase matters more right now than almost any other geography on the planet. Roughly 20% of all globally traded oil passes through those 21 miles of water every single day, approximately 17 to 19 million barrels. Japan imports nearly 90% of its oil through Hormuz, South Korea over 70%. China draws roughly 40% of its petroleum imports through the strait. The Columbia University Center on Global Energy Policy had assessed, in an analysis updated through February 2026, that if Iran's oil export terminals or production fields are struck, oil prices could spike to between $80 and $100 per barrel in the short term. Brent crude was trading near $71 per barrel before today. Goldman Sachs had already estimated a $10 per barrel Iran risk premium built into current prices. That premium is about to be recalculated. What the next hours and days determine is whether this stays a military exchange with defined limits or becomes something without a defined ceiling. The voices responding to Operation Epic Fury are arriving from every direction simultaneously, and they do not point toward de-escalation. Senator Lindsey Graham posted on social media that the end of the largest state sponsor of terrorism is upon us, and called the operation necessary and long justified. Democratic Senator John Fetterman, who had supported the June 2025 strikes, praised the joint operation. Senator Ruben Gallego, an Iraq war veteran, said publicly that Trump has been willing to do what is right and necessary. These are not fringe voices. These are sitting senators responding in real time. Iran's exiled Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi, son of the last Shah, long a figure at the margins of Iranian political life, posted a video addressed directly to the Iranian people and to the Iranian military. He told security forces that they had sworn an oath to protect Iran and the Iranian people, not the Islamic Republic, and asked them to join the people and help bring about a stable and secure transition. He warned them that otherwise they would go down with what he called Khamenei's sinking ship. He asked President Trump to exercise the utmost caution to protect civilian lives. Whether Pahlavi has meaningful influence inside Iran today is genuinely unclear. Trump himself had previously been skeptical of Pahlavi's role in any post-regime scenario. But the fact that he is posting videos addressed to the Iranian military within hours of the first strikes tells you something about how this moment is being read by those watching from the outside. Iran's response, on the record and through official channels, has used one word consistently: crushing. A senior Iranian official told Al Jazeera that all American and Israeli assets and interests in the Middle East have become legitimate targets, and that there are no red lines after this aggression. That statement is on the record. Iran's state television reported that a third wave of attacks was commencing. The IRGC claimed to have fired dozens of ballistic missiles toward Israel. The strikes on U.S. bases in Bahrain, Qatar, Kuwait, and the UAE are the operational demonstration of a threat Tehran made explicitly before any of this began. Iran's ambassador to the United Nations had written in a formal letter to the Security Council, days before the strikes, that all bases, facilities, and assets of the hostile force in the region would constitute legitimate targets in the context of Iran's defensive response. They said it, and now they are doing it. Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Dan Kane, had warned the White House in the weeks leading up to this that a military campaign against Iran could lead to a prolonged conflict, and that shortfalls in certain munitions categories could increase risks to American forces. That warning was in the system before the first aircraft left the runway this morning. Whether it changed the timeline or the targeting calculus is not yet known. What is known is that those American service members, the ones at Al Udeid, at the 5th Fleet headquarters in Bahrain, at bases across 7 countries, are now inside the retaliation that General Kane warned about. Trump said in his Truth Social video this morning that for 47 years the Iranian regime has chanted "Death to America" and waged an unending campaign of bloodshed and mass murder targeting the United States, our troops, and the innocent people in many countries. He addressed the Iranian people directly, telling them their hour of freedom is at hand and saying, and this is on the record, "When we are finished, take over your government. It will be yours to take." That sentence is either the most consequential thing an American president has said about Iran in decades, or it is a statement that reveals an assumption about what comes after the bombs stop falling that may or may not be supported by the facts on the ground. No one knows tonight what percentage of Iranians will hear those words and rise. No one knows whether the IRGC, institution by institution, will fracture or hold. No one knows whether the strikes on Tehran's ministries and missile facilities will produce capitulation, consolidation, or something in between that nobody in Washington or Jerusalem has fully planned for. What is not in question is what has already happened and what it has already set in motion. 2 American aircraft carriers are in the region. Iran has struck 4 American military bases. Israel is intercepting ballistic missile barrages. The Strait of Hormuz is under UK MTO alert. Iran's internet has gone dark for the second time in 2 months. The Pentagon has named its campaign Operation Epic Fury, and President Trump has told the Iranian people that their hour of freedom is at hand. The students who were marching on Iranian university campuses this week, chanting slogans that carried the death penalty under Iranian law, went to sleep last night inside a country at the edge of war. They woke up inside one. This is a developing situation. Every detail we have given you is confirmed and sourced. What happens in the next 72 hours, at the Strait of Hormuz, at U.S. bases across 7 countries, inside Iran's chain of command, and inside a global oil market that has been pricing in a $10 risk premium for weeks, will determine whether Operation Epic Fury has a defined end, or whether the word prolonged, the word General Kane used in his warning to the White House, turns out to be the most important word anyone said in this entire crisis. We will keep you informed as events develop. Stay close. Iranian missiles also targeted 6 Arab countries simultaneously: Bahrain, the UAE, Qatar, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, and Jordan, with Saudi Arabia confirming Iranian attacks on Riyadh and its eastern province, claiming successful interceptions, and warning it would take all necessary measures, including, in its own words, the option of responding to aggression. Iran launched dozens of ballistic missiles toward Israel. The Israeli military confirmed multiple salvos. Air raid sirens sounded across Israel throughout Saturday. The Homefront Command activated nationwide. Israel closed its airspace to all civilian flights. El Al, Israel's national carrier, announced it was preparing a recovery operation to bring Israelis stranded abroad back home once security clearances permitted. The carrier suspended new ticket sales until March 21st. More than 1,400 flights in and out of Middle Eastern destinations were canceled on Sunday, with service halted at some airlines through the end of the following week. Dubai International Airport, the world's busiest international airport, announced an indefinite halt to flights. The skies over the most strategically critical airspace on Earth were being cleared of everything that was not a missile or a fighter jet. Iranian missiles hit Tel Aviv. Israeli first responders confirmed a woman in her 40s was killed by an Iranian missile strike in the city center, the first confirmed fatality on Israeli soil since the fighting began. 27 people were hospitalized, including an infant, after heavy damage to 2 residential apartment buildings. Jordan confirmed it had intercepted and downed 49 drones and ballistic missiles that had entered or threatened its territory. Iran's parliament speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf went on state television Sunday. His exact language is on the record. He called President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu filthy criminals who would face what he described as devastating blows. He added, "We have prepared ourselves for these moments and have considered all scenarios." That sentence, "We have prepared ourselves for these moments," is the one line in everything said by an Iranian official this weekend that deserves the longest pause. Iran had a succession plan. The Washington Post confirmed it. Barbara Slavin, a distinguished fellow at the Stimson Center in Washington, told Al Jazeera that Iran has a plan in place for the event of Khamenei's death. There will probably be a council that will be set up to run the country. It may already have been running the country as far as we know. That council has now been activated. Iranian state television, citing one of Khamenei's advisors, announced on Sunday that President Masoud Pezeshkian, Judiciary Chief Ghulam Hossein Mohseni Ejei, and a third senior legal official would lead Iran through the transitional period. Under Iran's constitution, the Assembly of Experts, a body of 88 Islamic clerics, is responsible for selecting a new supreme leader. The problem is that the Assembly of Experts is a body that operated in a country whose top military commanders, intelligence chiefs, and senior defense officials have been decimated in a single morning of strikes. The one senior civilian official clearly identified as still alive and active is Ali Larijani, Khamenei's former secretary of the Supreme National Security Council, former parliament speaker, one of the most experienced political survivors in Iranian history. Larijani posted on X on Saturday. His message was brief and unambiguous. Iran would deliver Israel and the United States an unforgettable lesson. Whether Larijani has the institutional authority, the military relationships, and the personal standing to actually coordinate the response that the IRGC is promising is a question that no intelligence service in Washington has a clean answer to tonight. Axios reported Sunday that whether the IRGC moves to seize direct political control of what remains of Iran's government, or whether the cascade of leadership deaths creates the popular opening that Netanyahu and Trump have both publicly referenced, is the central unresolved question of this crisis. CIA assessments, according to reporting confirmed by multiple outlets, suggest that a hardliner from within the IRGC would be the most likely successor if the clerical succession process collapses. The IRGC, even having lost its commander, still controls the missiles, still controls the drones, still controls the Basij forces in the streets, and it has told the world in a public statement that what is coming next will be the most ferocious offensive operation in the history of the Islamic Republic. Meanwhile, in the streets of Tehran on Saturday night, something else entirely was happening alongside the explosions and the sirens. People were cheering. CNN confirmed this. The New York Times confirmed it. Cheers and celebrations were heard in parts of Tehran following confirmation of Khamenei's death. The scenes mirrored those reported in Los Angeles, in London, in cities across the Iranian diaspora, where communities that had watched the regime massacre protesters in January gathered outside consulates and in public squares to watch the news. A young Iranian woman who had taken part in the January protests inside Iran before leaving the country told CNN, she asked not to be named for fear of endangering families still inside, "This is the beginning of freedom." She also said, and both halves of this sentence matter equally, that she worried about the difficult days ahead. The reaction inside Iran was not uniform. In Tehran's Engelab Revolution Square, thousands of mourners gathered on Sunday dressed in black, many crying, chanting "Death to America" and "Death to Israel," waving Iranian flags and holding photographs of Khomeini. The country is simultaneously celebrating and mourning the same man, in the same city, on the same day. That is what 36 years of concentrated power and the deaths of thousands of protesters who opposed it produces in the hours after it ends. Reza Pahlavi, the exiled son of Iran's last Shah, posted a message to the Iranian people on social media. He told Iranian security forces they had sworn an oath to protect Iran and the Iranian people, not the Islamic Republic, and urged them to join the people and help bring about a stable and secure transition. He warned them that those who refused would go down with what he called Khomeini's sinking ship. He also asked President Trump to exercise the utmost caution in protecting civilian lives. Trump himself had previously been skeptical about Pahlavi's role in any post-regime scenario. What role Pahlavi plays in whatever Iran becomes in the weeks ahead is not yet known, and any confident prediction about it should be treated with appropriate skepticism. Trump addressed the Iranian people directly in an overnight video. He told them to remain in their homes during the bombing campaign, and then, when it concluded, to rise up and take over their government. He said it would be theirs to take. He confirmed that heavy and pinpoint bombing of Iran would continue uninterrupted throughout the week, or as long as necessary. He posted on Truth Social to warn Iran not to, in his words, hit very hard in its retaliation. His exact text: Iran just stated that they are going to hit very hard today, harder than they have ever hit before. They better not do that, however, because if they do, we will hit them with a force that has never been seen before. That warning was posted. The IRGC's response was its announcement of the most ferocious offensive operation in the history of the Iranian armed forces. Both statements are on the record. Neither side is backed down. At the United Nations Security Council, Secretary General Antonio Guterres convened an emergency session. His statement, on the record, was that the use of force by the United States and Israel against Iran, and the subsequent retaliation by Iran across the region, undermine international peace and security. He said he deeply regretted that an opportunity for diplomacy had been squandered. Russia's ambassador Vasily Nebenzia condemned the U.S. Israeli strikes and demanded that Washington and Jerusalem immediately cease their aggressive actions. The Board of Governors of the International Atomic Energy Agency was convened for a special emergency session at its headquarters in Vienna, called for by Russia's permanent mission, to address what Russia formally described as military strikes against the territory of the Islamic Republic of Iran. The IAEA meeting was scheduled for Monday morning. Europe's response through the EU was to call the conflict greatly concerning and urge restraint, which is precisely the kind of language that means the machinery of multilateral diplomacy is running significantly behind the machinery of ballistic missiles. In Baghdad, hundreds of Iraqis attempted on Sunday morning to storm the fortified Green Zone, the location of the U.S. Embassy. A security source told AFP their attempts had been thwarted, but that they kept trying. Videos on social media showed protesters throwing stones at security forces who responded with tear gas. Protesters carried Iranian flags and portraits of Khamenei. Law enforcement agencies across the United States went on elevated alert, stepping up patrols at sensitive locations including houses of worship and diplomatic sites, working with intelligence agencies to address the threat of domestic attacks in the wake of the strikes. Here is where the line between a military campaign with a defined boundary and a regional war without one becomes impossible to locate. Iran has now targeted 6 sovereign Arab nations with ballistic missiles and drones. Saudi Arabia, which confirmed Iranian strikes on Riyadh and its eastern province, issued a statement calling them brutal Iranian aggression, confirmed its air defenses successfully intercepted the incoming missiles, and warned of dire consequences. Saudi Arabia, the region's largest oil producer, the custodian of the world's largest petroleum reserves, a country that shares a gulf with Iran, is now on the record warning of its right to respond to Iranian aggression on its own soil. The Strait of Hormuz carries roughly 20% of all globally traded oil through 21 miles of water every day. The UK Maritime Trade Operations Organization has issued active warnings to all maritime traffic in the Arabian Gulf, the Gulf of Oman, the North Arabian Sea, and the Strait of Hormuz. Dubai International Airport, the world's busiest international hub for passenger traffic, has halted flights indefinitely. The global aviation network is rerouting around a region that carries a fifth of the world's oil. The financial implications of what is now unfolding were priced into markets at a $10 per barrel risk premium before the first bomb fell on Saturday morning. What that premium looks like when markets open Monday morning, with the supreme leader of Iran dead, the IRGC having targeted 27 U.S. military bases, and 6 countries having received Iranian missile fire, is a number that energy analysts are currently revising upward in real time. Here is what is confirmed and on the record as of this moment. Ayatollah Ali Khamenei is dead. Confirmed by Iran's own state television, by the Iranian government, by 4 Israeli security officials, by Reuters, and by the President of the United States. He ruled Iran for 36 years and was killed at his desk. The IRGC commander is dead. The head of Iran's Supreme National Security Council is dead. Between 5 and 10 additional senior Iranian leaders who met at the compound Saturday morning are dead. Iran has launched what it calls the most ferocious offensive operation in its history against 27 American military bases across the Middle East and multiple waves of ballistic missiles at Israel. A 3-person transitional council of the Iranian president, the judiciary chief, and a legal official has been announced to govern Iran, while the 88-member Assembly of Experts selects a new supreme leader from a clerical class whose top military and intelligence advisors have just been decimated. The IRGC is intact. Its missiles are still flying. Its statement vowing to punish Khamenei's killers is public, documented, and being acted upon as this broadcast continues. And Trump has told the Iranian people that their hour of freedom is at hand. What none of that tells us, what no intelligence service, no war game, no historical precedent cleanly answers, is whether the death of the man who held ultimate authority over every branch of the Iranian state causes that state to fracture and fall, or causes it to consolidate around rage and retaliation in a way that produces something more dangerous than what existed before Saturday morning. The students who marched in January chanting slogans that carried the death penalty under Khamenei's law are watching from inside a country whose internet has gone dark again. Connectivity at 4% of normal levels, confirmed by NetBlocks, matching the blackout imposed during the January crackdown. The man who ordered that crackdown is dead. The institution that carried it out is still armed, still organized, and has publicly promised the most ferocious response in its history. Both of those things are true simultaneously. The 36-year chapter of Khamenei's Iran is over. What the next chapter is called, who writes it, and at what cost to how many people in how many countries? That is the question the world is now living inside. We will keep you informed as events develop. Stay close.